The purpose of this video is to discuss about how inflation and unemployment affect on Netherlands country. Inflation is defined as an increase over time in the general price level of goods and services in the economy. As the price level rises, less products and services are bought by each currency unit. Unemployment is interpreted as the desire for a full-time job by a person of working age between 16 to 65 years old, but he or she is unable to find one. Both inflation and unemployment could give the negative impact to all countries, including Netherlands countries. This video will show you more about inflation and unemployment effect on the Netherlands country.
Hi, I am the Ministry of Finance in Netherlands. The Netherlands is a small Western Europe country that's surrounded by Belgium and Germany. Netherlands also has a high population density in Europe. From United Nations statistics, the Dutch community is expected to be 70,146,490 by 2020. According to existing estimate, the Netherlands population is projected to rise by 70.5 million people before 2034. The Netherlands is currently rising at a relatively constant rate of 0.22% in a year. The rate of growth has added around 37,742 persons to the community from 2019 to 2020. Now, I will pass to Ministry of Economy.
Thank you, Ministry of Finance. Next is Amsterdam was the largest factor in population density in the Netherlands. Amsterdam was a city in the Netherlands. It has a population density of 4,439 inhabitants per square kilometer. The city has become densely packed because it is a center for both international tourism and finance, which is why Amsterdam was the most populated city in the Netherlands. That's all for population.
The Netherlands economy income was the 17th largest globally in terms of GDP, as per World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Its GDP growth rate was projected at about 48,860 in 2018 and 2019, making it one of the world's fastest growing nations. The Netherlands also has stable natural gas resources since the good spring was discovered in 1959. The Netherlands now accounts for more than 25% of all natural gases reserved in the European Union. The profit of natural gas have led to a significant increase in the profits for the Netherlands over the following decades. Next, I will pass to the Ministry of Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Yasmin. The Netherlands seems to have strong and open economy which highly depends on foreign trade. And the economic activities in Netherlands are mainly in food manufacturing, financial service, petroleum refining, chemical, the artistic field, and high technology in economy. After United States, Netherlands was the second largest agricultural supplier in the world. The Netherlands export 111 billion worth of farm products, including 10 billion in flowers and 7.4 billion in vegetable in 2017.
The main sector in Netherlands. The first sector is agriculture sector. The agriculture sector represents almost 16% the country's GDP and employs 2% of the active population in 2019. This sector produces high yields, which is due in part in intensive farming of arable lands. The main crops are exported is cereal, potatoes, and horticultural products. Netherlands also the largest flower exporter in the world. The second sector in Netherlands is the private sector. By investing in the business climate, entrepreneurship, and sustainable production and trade, the government plays a significant role through the permit requirement and regulation pertaining to almost every aspect of economic activity. Next is energy sector. Energy sector is divided into two sectors, namely nuclear energy and natural gas. Nuclear energy in the Netherlands is expected to transform into a net exporter of electricity for an importer in a decade's time. Moreover, the service sector with highest contributions to the country's economy is expected to dominate in the electricity consumption in the near future, followed by industry and agriculture.
National debt is the total amount of money which country's government has borrowed. In a brief period of time, the national debt grew sharply. As a direct result of repeated budget deficit, the debt has risen by 150 million euro since the start of the recession. The focus of this initiative is mainly on healthcare, social welfare, and the public sector. The introduction of cutback would lead to reduction in project budget deficit to 3.3% of gross domestic product in 2040. The national debt will be 466 billion, involved with 11 billion euro in interest spending, and the economy is projected to spend by 0.5%. Moreover, in order to minimize debt, and make spending feasible, the government needs to make a better use of current resources. The Dutch government report a spending surplus of 14 billion euro in 2019. This realized surplus have consistently surpassed those expected in government budget over the previous few years. Next, I will talk about inflation. Inflation is continuous increase in the general price level of goods and services in the economy. The statistics show the inflation in Netherlands from years of 1984 to 2019. They include food, footwear, resin, energy, telephone, leisure, and raw material costs as well as federal fees and taxes. The Netherlands Consumer Price Index or CPI inflation rates climbed to fastest level in 7 years in 2019. Next, I will pass to Azima as Ministry of Social Affairs and Employment for the recent inflation hike of the years.
Due to Ministry Health, Welfare and Sport. After it manifest in 2014 to 2019, the recent inflation rise is because the consumer price rise to 0.7% over the preceding months. Rising food and transport costs were the key driver of the increase, partially caused by decreased price consumption of abroad. The country's tourism industry make up a rather large part of its gross domestic price. However, Netherlands have increased the change of economic struggles that correspond with the economic situation in the other countries as well. Next, I will pass to Ministry of Health.
Next, I will talk about unemployment rates in Netherlands. Unemployment is a situation where there are people between age of 16 and 55 years old who are not working but actively seeking a job. In Netherlands, the unemployment rates measure the number of people actively looking for a job as percentage of the labor force. In 2019, the unemployment rates in Netherlands was just almost 4% and unemployment peaked in 2013 and 2014. So, for the reason of that rates, I will pass to Yasmin as Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Ministry of Health and Welfare. Unemployment rate become highest. This is because of the financial crisis. In tough economic times, this statistic may be attributed to the difficulties of finding a job. It is a noteworthy, however, that employment among the oldest working generations has risen most dramatically. Unemployment reduced again after year 2014 in the case of long-term and short-term unemployment. Most people in the Netherlands have been looking for a new job for less a year. Here is some research in Statista about June 2020, the third full month of the coronavirus pandemic in the Netherlands, reveals a significant increase in the employment rate.
To overcome this problem of inflation and unemployment in Netherlands, they have used a monetary policy and fiscal policy. The first monetary policy that Netherlands used is open market operations. Open market operation usually concentrates within short periods and not conducted in small amounts. The central bank sells government security, short-term bonds, or treasury bills in the open market to increase the money supply. Second is using the discount rate. The rate charged by the banks on this advance is 1/2 of 1% above of the discount rate. Change in the discount rate does have very slight impact on the size of banking system reserve.
Next is qualitative instrument or direct credit control. The bank restrict the expression of credit by imposing the regulation such as reducing the total credit in limits of amount bank can lend. Netherlands also imposing strict regulation on hire purchase agreement for higher minimum down payment and maximum repayment period or restrict lending policy by implementing collateral security of guarantees to discourage borrowing. For the fiscal policy is by decrease the government expenditure. The Netherlands present a very high income per capita, which is distributed in a rapidly equal manner. The gross profit domestic per capita is above the Europe average and was estimated at $53 in 2018. Also, an unemployment rate is relatively low at 3.4% in 2019. When government expenditure is be reduction, this will bring a direct multiplier effect on aggregate demand, also bring down the price level. Next, I will pass back to Azima.
Thank you, Ministry of Health and Welfare. The second instrument of fiscal policy is by increasing tax. The government tends to implement regressive tax structure or increase its indirect tax on goods and services to reducing the disposable income of individuals. This will also reduce the consumption of goods and services. That's all from me. Okay, I pass the next slide to Prime Ministry of Economy and Prime Minister.
Impact coronavirus pandemic to the Netherlands and the world was very huge. Due to COVID-19, thousands of jobs being cut across the Netherlands. Unemployment in the Netherlands has been rising sharply from 3.4% to 4.3%. Only in just 3 months, the number of the unemployment increased from 131,000 people to 404,000 people. It was a big number of unemployment. The higher unemployment will give an impact to the economy. That's all from me. I will pass to Prime Minister to talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Economy. Coronavirus give a negative effect to consumer price index. Statistics Netherlands show that the consumer price index was 1.1% higher in September than in the same month last year. Meanwhile, in August, the price of consumer goods and services were up by 0.7% year-on-year. This showed that the economy was affected by the COVID-19 on the world economic activity.
So, what government do for stimulus package on national debt, Prime Minister?
As an effect of the coronavirus outbreak, the Netherlands government has agreed to implement a package of unprecedented economic initiative. The Netherlands government has already announced a selection of exceptional economic initiatives to protect jobs and income in addition to the welfare of the people, as well as to absorb the implication for self-employed workers, small and medium-sized enterprise and large corporations. First, the implementation of a temporary scheme allowing companies to apply for help in paying their labor costs. Second, additional support for independent contractors. Third, relaxed rules with respect to the payment of taxes and reduced fines. Fourth, broadening of the scope of the guaranteed corporate financing scheme. Fifth, interest rate reduction on Q-credit, microcredit for small companies. Sixth, temporary guarantees for companies active in agriculture and horticulture. 7. Compensation scheme for impact sector.
In conclusion, we have analyzed the Netherlands labour market of a small macroeconomic model consisting the unemployment rate and inflation rate. Inflation is the rising trend in the general price goods and services which give impact to the economy and to the people in the country. Other impact of inflation is unemployment. When they are unemployed and suffer from wars, change of seeking new employment, this cause detrimental consequences for the unemployed, and those who are working feel less confident in keeping their jobs in the future. We hope that government can lighten the burden of people during the inflation and do something to decrease the unemployment. Thank you. That's all from me.